Okay, so the current status of the Western Virginian forest is basically one in which we have predominantly an oak hickory forest cover type. That constitutes the majority of the forest cover that we have here in the state, in our natural stands. And essentially the current state of that forest is and has been for quite a while, somewhat under threat. Essentially what we're trying to promote in many cases with oaks and hickories are species that are mid-tolerant to shade. They like partial exposure. They don't like being fully exposed, and they don't like being growing in shade. Now, unfortunately, because of the removal of a lot of past disturbances and kind of a changing in our disturbance regimes, and by disturbances I mean fire predominantly, but new invasive species like emerald ash borer, things that have wiped out American chestnut, all of these things have sort of combined to create a new environment that's making it harder and harder for oaks and hickories to thrive. Concurrently with our kind of changing disturbance regimes is sort of a changing pattern in harvesting. So this high grading, kind of selecting out, mining for our most valuable trees, and the abundance of clear cutting have sort of resulted in species compositions that have skewed away from what these forests historically were composed of. So under clear cutting, we're seeing kind of an increase in shade intolerant species, those that really like a lot of light, and that's usually our yellow poplar, kind of our biggest offender in that regard. When we're high grading and just sort of selecting out a few trees sort of scattered throughout your acreage, that tends to promote more shade tolerant regeneration, seedlings coming up in your understory. And in that case, we see a proliferation of sourwood, black gum, red maple. So we sort of have this spectrum where we have very little disturbance or very high disturbance. And in either case, we're not really promoting our oaks and our hickories. So we are seeing our forests become less and less composed of these sort of keystone species that sort of drove the ecology of this region. So there's a big effort statewide to kind of promote oaks and hickories, not only because oaks in particular are an important timber species, but because they are this hard mass producing species or forest cover type that supports wildlife that have lived on and subsisted on that food source for millennia. So one of the big impediments to successfully managing hardwood stands, it's a couple of things. One, there's a really long time horizon before people make investments. Those people that do make investments in their hardwood stands see a return. So if you're going to conduct some sort of herbicide treatment or planting, we might be talking about 80 plus years before that individual sees a return on that investment, which is often too long for many people to really take interest. Unfortunately, that's the type of stewardship a lot of our hardwood stands require. Kind of expensive treatments that need to take place early on so that we can kind of benefit in the long term and put value back in these forests that have been kind of mismanaged and mistreated and picked over for several centuries. What's in place now and what is sort of gaining traction and hopefully to come online soon is this Hardwood Initiative, which is a statewide plan that intends to subsidize some of these treatments that a lot of our non-industrial forest landowners would otherwise just be foregoing because they're too expensive to really pull off. So the plan is that state funds will become available to non-industrial forest landowners to help pay for some of these treatments that are otherwise sort of off the table as options for them.